Broadview, Illinois, a quiet suburb west of Chicago, erupted into chaos this past weekend, shattering the peace that residents had long taken for granted. What started as a protest against U.S. immigration and customs enforcement quickly spiraled out of control as tensions between demonstrators and law enforcement escalated. The demonstration, initially peaceful and organized, soon devolved into a tense standoff between passionate protesters and heavily armed federal agents stationed outside the local ICE facility. The air was soon thick with chemical agents, the sharp crack of pepper bullets echoing through the streets, as the usual calm of Broadview was shattered in an instant. Residents, many of whom had never witnessed such unrest, watched in disbelief from behind police barricades and from their windows, as their village was thrust into the national spotlight and became a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over federal authority and the right to protest. The deployment of federal force, the sight of riot gear, and the subsequent arrests left the community deeply shaken, raising urgent questions about jurisdiction, the militarization of civil dissent, and the boundaries of government power. As the dust settled and news crews descended, Broadview found itself at the center of a national reckoning, forced to confront difficult questions about America's identity and the principles it claims to uphold. The scars, both physical and emotional, remain visible throughout the community as residents grapple with the aftermath, support one another, and try to make sense of their new place in the national conversation. The protest on September 27th began peacefully, with local groups rallying outside the Broadview ICE facility to oppose intensified immigration roundups. For hours, demonstrators chanted and held signs, watched by local police. Tensions rose as federal agents from Homeland Security and Border Patrol replaced local officers, their presence escalating the mood. Protesters felt intimidated. Federal officials claimed they faced a growing threat. As night fell, the situation unraveled. Pepper bullets fired, panic erupted, and the protest site descended into chaos. Federal authorities described a necessary response to violence. Protesters insisted the aggression came from law enforcement. This clash of narratives, who provoked whom, now defines the controversy and deepens the community's divide. Broadview was left shaken, its residents caught between conflicting realities. Federal agents responded to the Broadview protest with swift, severe tactics, deploying pepper bullets and chemical agents to disperse the crowd. Projectiles burst in clouds of irritant powder, causing confusion, pain, and panic among unprepared demonstrators. Volunteer medics rushed to help as the air filled with acrid smoke and cries of distress. Federal officials justified the force as necessary to protect the ICE facility, framing the protest as a violent siege. Local leaders, including Governor J.B. Pritzker, condemned the use of chemical agents on peaceful demonstrators as unacceptable. For many, the federal response was seen as an act of intimidation, not defense, an overreach that trampled on First Amendment rights. The night's violence left a deep rift between federal objectives and local values. The scars of that confrontation linger, fueling ongoing mistrust. In the aftermath, federal and state officials clashed over the night's events. From Washington, Attorney General Pam Bondi painted the protest as a violent assault on law enforcement, justifying the federal crackdown. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker fired back, denouncing the use of chemical agents and vowing to defend the right to protest. Local leaders, including Broadview's mayor, accused ICE of retaliating against the community for exercising its rights. The Trump administration doubled down, sending more federal resources and signaling a hardline approach to unrest in so-called sanctuary cities. These conflicting narratives, federal defense versus local outrage, highlight a nation divided over the meaning of protest and the limits of federal power. For Broadview, the war of words has deepened mistrust and left residents feeling like pawns in a larger political struggle. The battle lines are drawn, with no easy resolution in sight. Behind the headlines, the Broadview riots left lasting marks on individuals swept up in the chaos. While the world watched news clips and read official statements, the real stories unfolded in the shadows. Stories of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances, their lives forever changed by a single night. Elias Cepeda, a community volunteer, was detained despite being a legal gun owner and having no record of violence. His arrest emblematic of the indiscriminate federal sweep. He had come to help keep the peace, but found himself treated as a threat, his rights and intentions disregarded in the confusion. Among those taken was also a military veteran, highlighting the diverse, non-violent motivations of many protesters. Veterans like him had served their country, only to be met with suspicion and force when they exercised their right to assemble. Detainees described being zip-tied, loaded into unmarked vehicles, and left in the dark about their fate. An ordeal that left psychological scars. Many spent hours, even days, without knowing what would happen next. Their families left anxiously waiting for news. These stories challenge the official narrative of a violent mob, revealing a crowd of concerned citizens, volunteers, and veterans. People from all walks of life had gathered, united by a desire for justice and change, not destruction. The trauma of that night lingers, as those arrested struggle to process their experience and seek justice. For some, the emotional wounds are as deep as the physical ones, and the search for accountability continues. For many, the events in Broadview are not just political, they are deeply personal. The memories of fear, confusion, and solidarity remain vivid, shaping how they see their city and their country. The human cost of the confrontation is a stark reminder of what's at stake. Behind every headline is a person, a family, a community, forever altered by what happened that night. These voices demand to be heard amid the noise of political spin. Their stories, raw and unfiltered, remind us that history is written not just by officials, but by those who lived through it. The federal intervention in Broadview fractured relationships between local police and federal agents, straining cooperation to the breaking point. Local officers found themselves sidelined, sometimes even threatened by federal agents determined to escalate tactics. This left Broadview's police caught between upholding the law and serving a fearful, angry community. Residents now view law enforcement with suspicion, unsure who truly has their interests at heart. Mayor Katrina Thompson's warnings reflect a community feeling besieged, not by protesters, but by the federal government itself. The Trump administration's threat to withhold billions in funding has only deepened the sense of being targeted for political reasons. Broadview, like many towns, is now an unwilling battleground in a national struggle over power and civil rights. Broadview's ordeal is part of a broader pattern. Federal crackdowns in cities with liberal leadership, where local officials often find themselves at odds with the priorities of the federal government. These tensions have only intensified in recent years, as national politics increasingly spill over into local streets. Echoing the confrontations in Portland, Oregon, where nightly protests have drawn national attention and sparked fierce debate over the limits of federal power. In both cities, protests near ICE facilities have been met with militarized force, with federal agents deployed in tactical gear, and local communities left to grapple with the consequences. These actions have been justified by the Trump administration as necessary to restore order and protect federal property, even as critics argue they escalate tensions. President Trump's rhetoric frames these cities as lawless, painting a picture of chaos and disorder that demands a strong federal response. Yet these claims are often contradicted by local crime data and the experiences of residents who see a different reality on the ground. The administration's narrative of chaos is used to justify aggressive tactics, including tear gas, flashbangs, and mass arrests, raising concerns about civil liberties. Even as local officials dispute the need for such measures, they find themselves struggling to assert control over their own cities. Legal battles are mounting, challenging the legality and scope of federal intervention. Portland and Oregon have sued to block federal deployments, arguing that these actions violate constitutional rights and undermine local authority. Illinois leaders are preparing similar challenges, determined to protect their communities from what they see as federal overreach. The conflict is shifting from the streets to the courts, where judges will decide the future balance of power between federal and local governments. As cities fight to defend their autonomy and civil rights, the outcome of these legal battles will have far-reaching consequences. The stakes are high, not just for Broadview or even for Chicago and Portland, but for the future of federal-local relations nationwide, and for the rights of cities to govern themselves. The outcome will shape how America responds to dissent, protest, and the balance of power for years to come. As Broadview settles into an uneasy calm, the core conflicts remain unresolved. Legal battles loom, with Governor Pritzker pledging to defend protest rights against federal overreach. Barricades and a heavy federal presence are now part of daily life, a constant reminder of the recent turmoil. Local leaders work to reassure residents, while organizers prepare for future demonstrations and legal fights. The federal government shows no sign of backing down, withholding funds and maintaining a hardline stance. The questions raised about protest, power, and community echo far beyond Broadview. The fragile peace holds, but the nation watches, uncertain what the next flashpoint will bring.